Look around. They talk about the Yang Gangs all internet. You don't look like the internet to me. Unless the internet is thousands of beautiful humans together on a field, unless that's what the internet looks like. I grew up in upstate New York, but I went to high school and college in New England, and I have to say, Boston is like the center of the universe for those times of my life. We came here to get drunk, here to party. No, we came here, this was our Vegas at the time. And you're looking at it being like, no way that this town could have been anyone's Vegas, but it was. Teenage Andrew Yang slinking around. So I went to Brown University. Anyone here do that? Oh yeah, I guess apparently I had to stay away from the mics. Anytime I have a technical issue, I say it's the Russians. So I left New England, I went to New York City, I've been around the country for the last, oh gosh, now I graduated from college in '96, so that's like 23 years ago. I've been all over, and now I'm back. I'm back with you here in Boston because we need a revolution, and we know where revolutions start. Where do they start? That's right, this place is the seat of the revolution. What kind of revolution do we need? We need a revolution of reason. A revolution of facts. And so I came out to run for president in large part because our country does not know what is happening to it. It's looking for an explanation. I'm running to help America understand that it is not immigrants that are causing problems around the country. Am I right, Boston? We have to help this country answer the question of our time, and the question is this: why is Donald Trump our president? Really, you all remember that night in 2016, you had the TV on and you were like, holy shit, we're doing this thing? You went to sleep, you were like, is that still real? Maybe all the skates flipped while I was in bed, and then you were like, oh, it really did happen. Remember that? I mean, how many people cried? Some people cried, for sure. There were tears. Some of you tried to talk yourself into it for like half a second. You're like, maybe this won't be that terrible. And it took us about a day to be like, oh, well, it's actually pretty terrible. And unfortunately, the country then devolved into confusion as to why he won. If you turned on cable news broadcasts, why would you think that Donald Trump's our president today? Russia. What else? FBI.
Racism.
Emails. Facebook. Mitch McConnell. Hillary Clinton. You know, there's a whole cocktail of reasons that the press has put out there, but they haven't dug into the numbers. And the numbers have a very, math, thank you. I dug into the numbers, and the numbers tell a very clear and distinct story. The numbers say that the reason why Donald Trump is our president is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa. And if those states sound familiar to you, those are all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And now, what happened to those jobs, we are now going to do to the retail jobs, the call center jobs, the fast food jobs, the truck driving jobs, and on throughout the economy. We're in the midst of what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution? Just now. And I am barely a politician. So when I go around the country, I ask people, do you notice stores closing where you work and live? How many of you notice stores closing where you work and live, retail? And you all live in Boston, the Boston area, which is one of the most prosperous areas in the country. If anyone's going to keep their Main Street stores open, it's you all. But even your Main Street stores are starting to close. And why are they closing? Amazon, that's right. Amazon's like a giant black hole sucking out $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? 0! Right, that's the math, Boston. 20 billion out. 20 billion out, 0 back. And then the communities are looking around me like, where'd the money go? Where'd the money go? The money went over to Jeff Bezos and the gang. They paid 0 in taxes, and I just want you all to imagine the scene when the accountants and the CFO all come into Jeff's office in Seattle and say, hey Jeff, great news, we're paying zero in taxes again. And what does Jeff do? Jeff goes to his vault in the back of his office, takes bags of gold coins, gives them to each of them. They like count the gold, they throw them in their vehicles, they drive home, and they like act like Scrooge McDuck and do like little bats and like little vaults of gold coins, right? That's the scene. And this is not their fault. They're just doing their jobs. Whose fault is it that Amazon's paying zero in taxes? Our fault. It's the government's fault. How dumb do you have to be to have $1 trillion tech company pay zero in taxes, less than everyone here in this field today? How can I say with confidence that Amazon paid less in taxes than each and every one of you? Unless it's negative, unless they just start giving you money, which is sort of my plan. Am I right, Boston? So Amazon's closing these stores and malls, 30% of stores and malls closing. The most common job in America is a retail clerk. The average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $11 an hour. What is she going to do when her store closes? When you all call a customer service line and you get the software, what do? You go 000 human representative until you get someone, right? Who does that? Raise your hand. Yeah, I do that too. That is the human thing to do. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hey, Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, efficient, a little bit seductive apparently. But it's going to be so good that you might not even realize it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who answer a phone for a living right now and get paid $14 an hour? I just spoke to a group of 70 CEOs, and I asked them, how many of you are looking at having AI and software get rid of your back office workers? Guess how many hands went up out of 70? All 70, that's right. At least one of them was lying. But I'm sure 69 of them were telling the truth. And you know their hands went up because they could be fired if they don't make that move. If a company comes and says, I can get rid of your 1,000 call center workers with this software, and you don't sign that deal, they will fire you the next quarter. This system is arranged to do exactly what it's doing, which is push more and more people to the curb. I'm going to go through one more big example because it's so important to our country. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states in this country. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States of America. And my friends in Silicon Valley, how many of you all work in technology or study tech? I have a feeling, yeah, you have that look about you. Well, we're in Boston. This is like one of the smartest cities in the country. I know there are a lot of people work in tech here. So how many of you have friends who are actually working at companies that are designing self-driving cars and trucks? Some of you. Me too. And they tell me that they are 98% of the way there. Now, why are so many smart people working on self-driving cars and trucks? For the money. $168 billion a year in economic incentives to automate away truck driving. Think about that number for a second. $168 billion a year. That is a staggering, almost unimaginable amount of money. If you have that much gold waiting for you at the end of the rainbow when you're an investor and someone comes to you and says, hey, I've got this company that's going to help automate away truck driving, all you have to do is invest $500 million, you actually make that bet because you see the $168 billion at the other end. So you have some of the smartest people in the country working on it right now, and they tell me that they are 98% of the way there. Now that sounds like a lot, but 2% is a pretty big error rate when you're talking about semi-trucks. Am I right? You can't have semi-trucks just smashing into things and be like, oh, it happens 2% of the time. And self-driving trucks are really bad with something called snow, because they rely upon road markings to figure out what the heck to do. So the plan to address weather is they're going to equip these trucks with something called teleoperating software. So there's going to be a teleoperator sitting in a warehouse in Nevada or Arizona, and then this truck's going to be equipped with cameras on the front. And when the computer's not sure what to do, then the teleoperator is going to beam in using 5G from Nevada into the truck, drive it like a video game, and then beam out when the computer is confident again that it knows what to do. What do you all think the ratio is going to be between teleoperators and the current 3.5 million truckers? Maybe 1 to 100. maybe 5 to 100, maybe 10 to 100. So this is the future. This is the future that my friends are designing right now. What is that going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work in a truck stop, motel, or diner that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? This is the fourth industrial revolution, and this is why Donald Trump's our president. He is not himself the cause of all the problems. He is a symptom. He's a manifestation. We're in the midst of the greatest transformation in the history of our country, and our fellow citizens do not understand it. So my first move when I dug through the numbers was not to run for president, because I'm not crazy. My first move was to go to, it's true, I'm a pretty ordinary guy for a presidential candidate, who right now is 6th in the polls, Boston. Oh my gosh. I gotta say, I'm enjoying sticking it to the people who didn't think that we were gonna make it. Here we were. They asked me, I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be there the whole way. They're like, sure you will be. I was like, oh, you just wait. You just wait. Longer than long shot, that's right. Even that journalist, he's all right. He's a good man. The first thing I did is I went to Washington, D.C. to talk to our leaders. I had a PowerPoint deck. I had the math. I had it all laid out and said, what are we going to do to help our fellow citizens transition during this fourth industrial revolution? And what do you think the folks in Washington, D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do? The three big answers I got were, number one, Andrew, we cannot talk about that. Number two, we should study that further. And number three, the most popular, the most responsible sounding is, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. It sounds great. And then I said, hey, I've done the math. I looked at the studies. You want to guess what the effectiveness rate was for federally funded retraining programs for the manufacturing workers in the Midwest who lost their jobs?
Less than 15%.
0 to 15%. That's right, that's a fail on any curve. How many of you all studied economics? So economics said that if you got rid of 4 million jobs, the worker retrained, reskilled, moved for new jobs, higher productivity, all would be well. Do you remember that in macroeconomics? Remember that? So in real life, instead, half of them left the workforce and never worked again. And then of that group, half filed for disability. And then you saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those populations to the point where now America's life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. Because both suicides and drug overdoses have overtaken vehicle deaths as leading causes of death for the first time in American history. When is the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu of 1918, 100 years ago. We are back in Spanish flu territory because of suicides and drug overdoses. This is why Donald Trump's our president, but for whatever reason, our media can't get its shit together to dig through the actual facts and tell America the truth. So when I said this to the folks in Washington, D.C., and I said, look, education programs funded by the government don't work very well by the numbers, you know what they said to me next? I guess we'll get better at them. And then they went back to their salad. And I said, holy crap, like this is what passes for our policy around here. And one person in Washington, D.C. said something to me that drove me here to you all. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about what you're describing because Washington, D.C. is not a town of leaders, it's a town of followers. And the only way we will do anything about it is if you bring a wave crashing down on our heads from other parts of the country. And I said, challenge fucking accepted. So this is what led me to run for president. I said, oh my gosh, this country does not have the antibodies. It doesn't have the immune system to figure out what's going on. It's got this capital that's totally disconnected from the reality of what's happening to its people. But I know that Americans recognize the truth when they hear it. That the truth is a powerful thing. And that if we, in a democracy, can create that wave and bring it crashing down on their heads, they will not know what hit them. So that is what we started to do over this last number of months. And I remember the first time you heard about this campaign, what did you hear? There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. You remember that? Nothing like the first time, right, Boston? And it's true, those things are all true. And the first time you heard that, you thought it was a gimmick. You thought it was a joke. But then you dig in to the freedom dividend and you find this is a deeply American idea. That Thomas Paine, one of our founding fathers, was for it at the beginning. And Martin Luther King championed it in 1967 in his book, Chaos or Community, the guaranteed minimum income, and it is what he was fighting for the day he was killed in 1968. That Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists endorsed it, and it was so mainstream it passed the U.S. House of Representatives in 1971. And then one state, 11 years later, passed the dividend, where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that, Boston? And how do they pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Marijuana, that's right. Oh, it's technology, you got it right. It's technology, it's AI, it's big data, it's the Internet of Things. How many of you all saw that study that said that our data is now worth more than health and freedom from substance abuse? How about clean air and clean water? How about affordability of student loans? Oh, and I'm just like Bernie, I want to forgive and get rid of a lot of that stuff because the student loan debt is just ridiculous. We're up to $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. How many of you all are students? You have that look about you too. So I still can't believe it. How much does college cost you all nowadays? $65,000 a year, $70,000 a year. That's like $250,000 to educate a young person. And then they're like, don't worry about it. We'll give you the loans. We're so helpful. We'll just give you the mountain of debt. And families and students feel like they have no choice but to take the debt. That's why we're up to $1.5 trillion in student loan debt, up from less than $100 billion in 1999. Think about that growth. Less than $100 billion, up 15-fold in 20 years. And so when someone looks at that and says, you made the choice, it's your fault, I'd call bullshit on that. Because why has college gotten 2.5 times more expensive since when I went to college? It has not gotten 2.5 times better. I hate to break it to you. They did upgrade the heck out of your education where you're all 2.5 times smarter than people my age. It's pretty much the same education, but it's got a lot more expensive. And so we have to help get the cost down. We have to forgive a lot of the student loan debt. So these are the measurements of the 21st century economy. And I will be the first president to use a PowerPoint at the State of the Union and present to you all how we're doing. PowerPoint, that's right, Boston. Yes, the nerdiest campaign in American history. But this is what the American people want and need to see anyway. I mean, what's going on with the State of the Union addresses now? Holy cow. Right? I mean, those things have become so bizarre and borderline unwatchable. So my State of the Union would actually say, it's all right, here are the measurements. 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour. That's horrifying and unacceptable. So we're going to get that rate down by 50% in the next 4 years, and I'll report back to you how we're doing. That's the only way you can make progress. If you don't have the right measurements, you will never make progress. Now, how many of you watched the debate where I staked out the new 3rd position on climate change out of Detroit? Remember that? All right, the position number 1 that you're all familiar with, we need to fight climate change as quickly as possible. Position number 2, climate change is a hoax. And then Andrew Yang's position number 3, it is worse than you think. Unfortunately, it is getting worse and worse. You see the same studies I do. You see that the ice pack in Greenland is melting at the rate projected in 2070 today. You see the UN report that says we're going to be okay if the majority of the world's population goes vegetarian immediately. You see that the last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. And that our weather is actually palpably getting warmer before our eyes. Unfortunately, there's a proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. We should have been working on this feverishly 20 years ago, but we did not. And so now we're going to have to work on it feverishly right now. Am I right, Boston? So my plan to address climate change takes into account that it's worse than people think. It takes into account the fact that Americans are even now getting flooded out of their homes, and that we need to start moving climate refugees within our own country. And that we have to not just, frankly, pressure our citizens to do less of the bad. We have to do more of the good. We have to start reversing the harm that we're doing to our climate and to our planet. So that means things like planting lots and lots of trees in vast tracts of land. And we can pay other countries to let us plant trees in their countries and then take care of it. It means doing things like reseeding our oceans and marine life with plankton and seabeds. We have to start actually affirmatively healing our planet, not pretending that if we pollute less, it's going to restore itself, because it will not. And in the United States of America, though we like to think otherwise, we're only 15% of global emissions. The rest of the world is 85%, and you all can do the math on that. So we have to go to the rest of the world and say, look, that coal-burning plant you have, we've got wind turbines for you. We've got solar panels. This has to be a global competition where we make it easier for the rest of the world to go green, because other than that, all of our straws and recycling and composting will not do the trick. We have to solve the real problem. We have to get smart. We have to start doing the math. So Donald Trump's our president today in large part because he got at least some of the problems right. And what did he say in 2016? He said we're going to make America great again. I know it seems like a long time ago now. It was only 3 years ago. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. And that did not quite work out for us. We have to own the problems, but then we have to present real solutions. Donald Trump's solutions were unfortunately garbage and nonsense. What did he say? We're going to build a wall. We're going to turn the clock back. We're going to bring the old jobs back, and we have to do the opposite of all of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible. We have to evolve in the way we think about work and value. We have to do the opposite of what Donald Trump said, and I am the ideal candidate for that job, because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. What does math stand for, Boston? That's right, we're going to make America think harder. Now here in Boston, you all have a special place in America. This is the intellectual hub of the country. This is the cradle of the revolution. But you're also proximate to a magical land called New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is the first primary in the state. In February of 2020, the entire world is going to be looking to see what people in New Hampshire do. The last cycle, about 250,000 people voted in the New Hampshire primary. I'm going to do some math. It's fun. You're like, holy crap, there's actually like some math in this. So how many people are running for president right now? 20. It's going to be down to, let's call it 10 by the time the voting starts. I'll be one of the 10. How many New Hampshire voters do we need in February to finish in the top 3 in New Hampshire? This is a little bit of a trick question because it's a bit of a range. But to give you an order of magnitude, you're looking at something like 60,000 voters would put you in the top 2 or 3 in all likelihood in New Hampshire. So everything I'm talking about, there are some people here in this crowd right now that were like, this sounds fantastic. Freedom dividend, new measurements of the economy, the evolution of our society, but we can't make it happen. This guy's ahead of his time. How many of you are thinking that? Raise your hand if you're thinking that. There are a couple of you. Oh, it's good. They're honest. That's good. Most of you, I'm happy to say, are like, oh, you can do this right now. So those of you who have your hands up, What I want to tell you is that if we get 60,000 people in the state of New Hampshire on board with a vision, then imagine the headlines in mid-February of 2020. Think about that. These are the headlines that this group, that we together can make happen. We get 60,000 people in New Hampshire to vote for a vision of a trickle-up economy that catches fire with the rest of the country, then everything becomes real very, very quickly. There is nothing stopping the majority of citizens of a democracy from voting ourselves a dividend. Nothing at all. And when people wake up to that reality, like, wait, we can do that? We can do that? Oh, we can do that. We can do that. And then we're going to let the folks in New Hampshire know that we can do that. And then when they plant that flag, the entire country is going to say, what just happened? Andrew Yang just beat who? What? The guy I saw on the TV who wanted to give me $1,000 a month? We can actually have that guy win and get that across the finish line? And that is the possibility. This is the revolution. You all are the lever. The people in New Hampshire are the lever. And you don't need much. You don't need much of a lever to move the mountain. Because this democracy is ours. It's still ours for the taking. We have to take it back, unfortunately. Someone said we're running against the illusion of power, and that's true. I have been there. I've been with the leaders of our society on the biggest stages, in the machinery that's meant to run our country. And I will tell you all, point blank, it is worse than you think. You think it's like, oh, things are going badly. Oh, they're going really badly. And you get into the guts of the machine, and it does not look any better. It's going to have to be us, but we're up for it. Are you up for it, Boston? It is forward! Let's go, Boston! Let's go! Thank you, Boston! Let's go!